The coaches will get the most blame for the Buffalo Bills and the Cincinnati Bengals disaster losses, but the quarterbacks need some too. That and more on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert Gino Camilleri. On today's episode, the Dallas Cowboys come up clutch against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The rookie quarterbacks look amazing. But first, we have some disaster losses to break down with the Cincinnati Bengals and the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to tell you why the quarterbacks deserve some blame as well. Before we do, thank you for making the Locked On NFL podcast your first listen of the day and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Make sure that you tune in for the afternoon edition of Locked On NFL and step into the barbershop with Tony Wiggins. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. Gino, it was a crazy week 5 in the NFL, but we have to start with some wild losses for the Buffalo Bills and the Cincinnati Bengals. And me personally, I got to start with Buffalo. I mean, Buffalo had every opportunity to win that game against the Houston Texans. They ultimately fall 23-20. And I know that Sean McDermott is going to get a ton of blame for the last drive for the Buffalo Bills, where they run 3 plays. They burn no timeouts for the Texans. They throw the ball down the field consistently and ultimately set up Houston with an easy field goal. But Josh Allen deserves a ton of blame in this one as well. He completed only 9 passes in the game. I thought he was very inaccurate early on. It wasn't just, a function of the offense. Josh Allen played poorly in the game. He was not on his best behavior, to put it lightly. And I know a lot of blame is going to go to the coaching staff, but Josh Allen played poorly in this one, and he deserves a lot of blame as well.
This is one of those games that it felt like Josh Allen has been far removed from Wyoming.
Right.
But that Wyoming element is still in the back pocket of Josh Allen. And I thought one of the good things that Joe Brady has done since he has taken over as OC has really brought Josh Allen back to earth and made him a comfortable pocket passer who doesn't have to have these wild card moments. Well, when things get awry and that Houston game looked like it was going to avalanche at some point, Josh Allen turned back into Josh Allen. So you're 100% correct, Tyler. At the end of that game, there's no excuse to not run the ball to at least allow Houston to burn 1 or 2 timeouts and put yourself in a better position that they don't have the opportunity to even win that in regulation, and you take your chances in overtime. But when your quarterback, who, yes, it is a bargain what he's getting paid as opposed to the guys who've been paid after him, he's still getting paid to be one of the best guys. He's talked about as one of the best guys, and you go 9 for 30 and put your team in a precarious position without Khalil Shakur. You knew that you had to play within that game plan, and it really seemed like it spiraled out of control before they could reel things back in.
Yeah, it seemed like the first 2 years of Josh Allen. Now, look, I think Josh Allen deserves more blame than he's going to get, but that does not absolve, Sean McDermott for what he did, and Joe Marino from Locked On Bills talked about that.
But along the way, you want to talk about accomplishing nothing in terms of not forcing them to use any of their timeouts and throwing the ball 3 very low percentage throws down the field. I don't know what the thought process was. Did you think if you threw the ball down the field that it would take a lot of time off the clock because the ball's in the air, and that way when you punt the ball, they don't have as much time? I can't even understand it. There's no explanation that would make sense to me. Run 3 efficient plays and get to overtime. It's an indefensible sequence managed by Sean McDermott. It's indefensible. And listening to him after the game, he said, I take full responsibility. We need to be more efficient. Boy, talk about spoiling one heck of an effort by your football team to come back from being down 3 scores in the second half. And that's what you did. You thought that was your best chance to win the football game, was to do that?
My guy Joe is so frustrated with what he saw out there, and he should be. Again, don't want to eliminate the blame on the coaching staff, who should get the vast majority of the blame. But I just wanted to point out that Josh Allen did not play as well as he needed to play. Now, on the other side of it, the Cincinnati Bengals had a similar situation. Up by 10 on the Baltimore Ravens, up by 3 with less than 3 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And then you end up losing to the Baltimore Ravens and dropping to 1-4, which could literally kill your season for the Cincinnati Bengals, a team that had Super Bowl aspirations. It's a very similar situation because the Bengals have the ball in overtime after forcing a fumble on Lamar Jackson. All they need is a field goal to win with Evan McPherson, who's been reliable over the years. They have the ball past midfield. They run the ball 3 times, really not being very aggressive to set things up. And ultimately, they settle for a 53-yard field goal, which their rookie punter or holder, whatever you want to call it, messes up the hold. It messes up the kick. The Baltimore Ravens go back down and score to win the game. But I want to go back a little bit, Gino, because everyone is going to blame the head coach for the lack of aggression on that final drive for the Bengals and not trying to get a closer field goal or not trying to be more aggressive with the ball. But less than 3 minutes left in Baltimore territory, inside the 40-yard line, with a chance to put another field goal up to make it 6 or potentially go down and run out the clock. Joe Burrow throws an interception on a 2nd and long. And because of the bad coaching with the long field goal in overtime, the blame for Joe Burrow is just going to get totally washed away. Now, look, I get it. Joe Burrow, 392, 5 touchdowns with the 1 interception. He played generally great. But, Gino, I'm of the belief you could score 100 straight points in a basketball game, but if you foul a guy shooting a 3 to lose by 1 and he hits the free throw, you lost your team the game no matter what you did before that. One stupid mistake can ruin everything that you've done. And that Joe Burrow mistake, throwing that interception, is going to be overlooked, and I don't think that it should be.
And we're going to talk about it a little bit later when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys, but Dak Prescott didn't play a great game, turns the ball over multiple times, but comes up and scores a touchdown with 20 seconds left. That's what it is. The NFL, it really is, what have you done for me lately? And in this league, it is a minute-to-minute league, and I'm so glad you brought up that point right at that 3-minute mark. You have to know in that situation, and these guys are getting paid crazy amounts of money, which just supersedes what Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and all those guys got. And it really is unfair because in those moments, why were they best? Because they knew how to live to see another day, not put that ball in precarious position and put your team in the position to win a game. Joe Burrow, as good as you are, that last interception, it weighs so much more because of that situation. And then you go to the coaching point. How different is it from Sean McDermott, who is ultra aggressive, to Taylor, who's ultra conservative? These coaches got to start to find this middle ground of where they can live because it is costing them games. Who's going to be the first coach to lose their job because of these decisions? It's going to come sooner or later. We're 5 weeks almost into the NFL. Somebody's going to get the axe swung at some point.
Yeah, and that sounds like a great discussion for another day here on Locked On NFL. But overall, I'm with you. You know, these coaches made big mistakes, but they're highly paid quarterbacks. Joe Burrow and Josh Allen are expected to be top 3 quarterbacks, top 4 quarterbacks in the NFL, and they did not look like it in parts of these games when they needed it the most. But with that being said, 2 quarterbacks who did get it done are the rookies, Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels. We're going to talk about that. Plus, like Gino said, little Dak Prescott coming up in the clutch for the Cowboys. It's Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you aren't looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Today's episode is also sponsored by BetterHelp. What's something that scares you? Share a fear with us, no matter how big or small. I mean, for me, I'm claustrophobic. I don't like to be in small spaces. But thinking with Halloween just a couple weeks away, it's time to think about those fears. Maybe they don't involve zombies and ghosts, but therapy can be a great tool for helping you face your fears and finding ways to overcome them. Because sometimes the scariest thing is not facing our fears in the first place, and that holds ourselves back. I've worked with BetterHelp. It was a great experience. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, you got to give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, football fans, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about those devastating losses with the Buffalo Bills and especially the Cincinnati Bengals, who dropped to 1-4, and that's quite the hole to try to dig out of. But we gotta do some more optimistic talk here, Gino. It's time to be positive. And if you want to be positive, you need to look no further than the rookie quarterbacks, the first two picks in the draft. And honestly, you could throw Bo Nix in there as well. It wasn't as good of a game for Bo Nix, but 206 yards, 2 touchdowns, led the Broncos to their third win of the season. But we got to talk about Caleb Williams. Look, Jayden Daniels has been getting all of the love in the first 4 weeks of the season, but Caleb Williams finally burst on the scene. 20 for 29, 304 yards, 2 touchdowns. The Bears dropped 36 points on the lowly Panthers and send them back to the shadow realm off the Andy Dalton high that they got here recently. I mean, Caleb Williams looked as advertised, moving around in the pocket, playmaking, throwing the ball down the field, hooking up with his receivers. Swift looked good. I think this was a big moment for Caleb Williams. He looked pretty good at times last week against the Rams, but the performance that he put up today reminded people, this is why I was the number 1 pick.
I think it was just a matter of time and getting his confidence in the National Football League for Caleb Williams, because he's always played with that swagger. There's that element of getting the timing down as well. And he's kind of figured it out, man. He threw up some pretty balls there today to DJ Moore, had a game, good for him.
That's
and the one thing that is really clicking for them now, Tyler, that wasn't in those first couple games, DeAndre Swift has gotten it going. That offensive line, they've figured something out. They've been able to keep Caleb clean for the most part. I mean, much more than they were in the beginning of the season. He's really starting to get his confidence. And I hate this back and forth discussion. Like, you got to be a Caleb guy or you got to be a Jayden guy. Like, let's embrace the greatness of these two, man. Like, we're a year removed from this Bryce Young disaster, the team that they just played. He was getting reserve minutes when they're down 26 points. Like, that's such a sad world to see. So, like, let's just embrace how good Caleb Williams was today. And it's great to see the city of Chicago get a quarterback. Like, it's about time. And I think that team they're just building, because that North, I mean, Minnesota's 5-0 and they're right in the mix of things. Like, they got to be feeling good being the Chicago Bears.
I mean, 3 of the top 5 teams in the NFC might be in the NFC North. I know someone who is fired up about this performance is Lauren Cox from Locked On Bears.
Oh, absolutely.
Caleb Williams keeps getting better, and this Chicago Bears offense finally showed its full potential in a dominating win over the Carolina Panthers. I'm Lauren Cox, host of the Locked On Bears podcast, and Caleb Williams finally showed the complete package, dropping in the deep balls that had been just out of reach in earlier games this season. He saw the field well, he looked off safeties, and the offensive line did a good job of giving him time to throw so that these plays could develop downfield. Finally, things were open for this Bears offense vertically, the way they had been horizontally all year long. And of course, they can rely on their defense every step of the way for a team-wide dominating performance. For more analysis of the Chicago Bears' victory over the Carolina Panthers, check out the Locked On Bears podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
We got to get Lauren Cox on some books on tape. Like, we got to get a company out there to pay him. He's got that perfect books on tape voice. It truly is. But moving away from Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels, who has been impressive the entire season, leads the Commanders to 4-1. He didn't throw as many passing yards as Caleb Williams, 14 for 25, 238, touchdown and interception. But he adds the 82 rushing yards. And I mean, Jayden Daniels has just been absolutely as advertised. And I know that the Cleveland Browns are a joke. They're literally a joke franchise. And I got a lot to say about the Browns that we'll get to later this week on Locked On NFL. But this is how you should beat a team like the Cleveland Browns if you're going to be a good team. And I don't think that the Commanders are just a good story at this point. I think they're a good team, and the connection with Terry McLaurin and the two running backs out of the backfield with Eckler and with Robinson, like they really have it all going right now, even though the defense is going to struggle at times. Just really exciting to see these two young quarterbacks really plant their flag like we're here and we're ready now.
I talked about confidence with Caleb Williams. Man, Jayden Daniels, this is his bread and butter. He comes out there ready to play each and every week. And you talk about Washington's defense. It's not going to matter if he continues to sling the ball the way he is. And I think Washington put out a really good example of how you can approach an offseason when you are going to bring in a young quarterback. You talk about the running back. You bring in Austin Eckler. You bring in Zach Ertz. Is this the 2011 Eagles dream team that went down the drain? Say that tongue-in-cheek on my end. But they have done a fantastic job. You bring in Cliff Kingsbury, who just knows that we cannot limit this guy and just go side to side. We have to push the ball downfield. And Terry McLaurin has to be feeling better than anybody right now that he can unleash his downfield ability. Jayden Daniels is going to have a long career in the NFL, and his first season, it might be to push for an NFC East title right now. They're leading 4-1. The Cowboys have been in one-score games. They barely pulled one out tonight. My Eagles, they are what they are, and the Giants, they got one too. But Washington, the confidence in Jayden Daniels, how can you feel bad if you're a Washington fan? This is so far removed from the Dan Snyder years. Like, it's gone. This is a new regime. It feels like a new day truly is here in Washington. It feels so weird saying this about a rival team of mine, but how can you not root for the kid, especially because he was the number 2? He wasn't the number 1. Everybody's saying, oh, Caleb is so much better, so much better. Well, hey, those discussions are popping up only 5 weeks into the league. There's a reason why. The kid is balling out right now.
100%. And there are two things that really stood out to me that kind of go to, let's call it the vibes that you're talking about here. There's a video of Sam Cosmi, the really good offensive lineman for the Commanders, on the side saying, I haven't had this much fun in a long time. Like, his teammates are buying into Jayden Daniels. And then, I mean, he makes Diami Brown look good. What's going on with that? Like, I mean, you know that there's magic happening now. That dude's been dormant for a couple of years since getting drafted, and now he's out there making plays. So great stuff. David Harrison from Locked On Commanders talked about this win as well.
Zone interception in the first quarter, and you're facing a team that's looking to get off of a 1-3 start in the first quarter of the NFL team. This is David Harrison of the Locked On Commanders podcast. And if you're Washington Commanders, you're going to do what every other NFL team would do, and you're going to hang 34 points on that same team from that point forward. Jayden Daniels started his Week 5 matchup against the Cleveland Browns, completing just 50% of his passes, 5 for 10. He threw an interception at the 1-yard line. Browns linebacker Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah coming up with that one. But from there on, the Washington Commanders, like I said, able to hang 34 points on the Cleveland Browns defense. But not just that, the defensive side of things for the Commanders, able to keep Deshaun Watson and the Cleveland Browns from taking advantage of that slow start and holding them to just 13 points. For more on this game and everything going on with the Washington Commanders, check out the Locked On Commanders podcast 5 days a week, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What a time for David, and he deserves it, man, after covering this team for so many years. But with that being said, Sunday Night Football, it was a late one, ladies and gentlemen, if you stayed up to watch it. But speaking of late, Dak Prescott came through in the clutch. It's Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Hey, NFL fans. Yep, NFL fans. I'm talking to you. You can start the second quarter of the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, you can view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same exact page where you place your bets. And right now, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And if you listen to our FanDuel Friday episode with me and the mastermind, Ross Jackson, I told you guys my hammer bet of the week was the Minnesota Vikings against the Jets. Got a little tight at the end, but hey, would have cashed for you there. So make sure that you go to America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel. That's at FanDuel.com. All right, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. What I say this every single Monday episode, I can't help it, but what an incredible week in the NFL. I mean, we only get 18 of these in the regular season, folks. They all should be incredible, and boy, has the NFL season delivered so far. And speaking of delivering, Dak Prescott delivered for the Dallas Cowboys at the end of the game. Gino, you talked about it earlier. This was an ugly game for the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, the Cowboys should have won this game by 20 points. They had so many red zone mishaps, whether it be the fumble, whether it be the interceptions, whether it be the blocked field goal, whatever it may be. Dallas tried to choke this game away so hard, but at the end, Dak Prescott, despite getting yelled at by his own teammates on the sideline and this and that from CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott delivers the pass right at the end of the game to give the Cowboys the advantage. The Cowboys win 20-17. Playing in Pittsburgh is just such a difficult task. It's such a tough task every time, no matter how good or bad the Steelers are, whatever. It's always tough. And Prescott goes in there, hangs 352 yards and 2 touchdowns on him. Just an excellent, excellent clutch play at the end by Dak Prescott to win that game.
And you write everything off when it came to the blocked field goal and the 2 interceptions because of that moment. And
right.
I want to take a second to step back and say Jalen Tolbert was hurt on the play before that, and he makes the play to win the football game. You talk about clutch, just going in there, playing for your guys around you. That's exactly what they did. But Dak Prescott, he got his money. And why was Jerry Jones waiting at all? Because that play right there shows you exactly why you had to pay them. And I said earlier in the show, we watched Peyton and Tom for so long just do these drives over and over. That drive was multiple minutes, 10 plus plays. They grinded that clock down against a Pittsburgh defense who, till the last play, I mean, they nearly got the ball back on that 3rd down. Get a helmet through the ball. That was a great hard-nosed rain, hour-and-a-half delay football game. And that might be the ultimate cherry on it is, look at all the adversity that you had to go by. Like, we had to play this game into the wee hours of the morning, and we were still able to come out of there with a victory. So as good as Jayden Daniels has been in the NFC East, I still think Dak Prescott, he has the resume, and tonight just goes to show you, because going into Pittsburgh, like you said, tough environment, and they got it done without Brandon Cooks as well, who just goes on the IR. You got CeeDee Lamb and a whole bunch of other guys, and they were able to get it done tonight. So hats off to Dak and that team.
And obviously missing pieces on defense. DeMarcus Lawrence, Micah Parsons. Like,
there you go, too.
They found a way. Like, the Cowboys did the Steelers thing of finding a way.
Yeah, great point.
Landon McCool of Locked On Cowboys talked about exactly that.
Penalties, injuries, ineptitude in the red zone, turnovers. In the end, it didn't matter as the Cowboys ground out a gritty win in Pittsburgh, winning 20-17 over the Pittsburgh Steelers. Hi, I'm Landon McCool with the Locked On Cowboys podcast, and there's a lot of injury news that we're going to have to cover the next week. There's a lot of things for the Cowboys team to clean up. There's a lot of penalties that they're going to need to go over, but they're going to do all of that with a big smile on their face as the Dallas Cowboys were able to go into Pittsburgh severely shorthanded without Micah Parsons, without DeMarcus Lawrence, injuries that they sustained during the game, including their starting left tackle, their fourth string defensive end that had to play Marcus Nealand. So it was a game of attrition, and the Cowboys did not handle it well through most very large parts of the game. But in the end, a touchdown to Tolbert was what solved all their woes, and they came away with the win. Check us out all week on the Locked On Cowboys.
Okay, so I think this is kind of the theme of the show, is you can overcome mistakes if you make the big play at the end. Like we talked about two highly paid quarterbacks not doing that at the beginning of the show. We finished with a highly paid quarterback not playing well for some parts of the game. It's not all on Dak as well, but in the moment when it mattered, he got it together and got it done. So a clutch win for the Cowboys, but I do want to spin it to the other side. Some of that 3-0 early start magic for the Steelers, that's worn off now. 2 straight losses. And let me say this, we could talk about Justin Fields and the offense not producing enough points. We can have that discussion. But this Steelers defense has not been as advertised. You give up 27 points to Joe Flacco, and Jonathan Taylor is able to run the ball. And then this week, you give up 350 passing yards to Dak Prescott at home in prime time, where you should be able to lock the gates. The Pittsburgh Steelers lock the gates on people when they play in Pittsburgh. So I think this Pittsburgh Steelers defense is not all that it's cracked up to be, despite, they did force the red zone turnovers. They did hold. They should get credit for that. But the fact that the Cowboys were able to go up and down the field, and they needed all those red zone turnovers for this not to be an absolute blowout, I think that there are some red flags we need to be thinking about with the Steelers and their defense right now.
I think some of it too, Tyler, is you have to look at how many times did Justin Fields just put them in such a bad position, man, where it's like you get the ball back, 3 and out. Your quarterback play was non-existent. But I'm with you. Playing in Pittsburgh, in a game where that Cowboys rushing attack, it hasn't been anything to write home about. Know what they are going to do. They're going to target 88. They're going to hit their spots with the other guys, and they executed their game plan. And sometimes it comes down to a 1-score game where your coach outcoached another guy. Maybe Mike Tomlin got a little bit outcoached tonight by Mike McCarthy in some spots, because I think that is part of it as well. But man, that AFC North, if you want to compete, you better get it together, because what are you going to do when you have to defend Lamar and he puts up 41 points, and Joe Burrow, they score 34 points today? What's going to happen on that end? And injuries, where were they for Pittsburgh? I mean, they were fully manned on their defense. So there's no excuses. They got to figure it out. It looks like Russell Wilson on the NBC broadcast should be coming back next week, but he hasn't played in quite some time, and we'll see how he does coming out of the elevation from Denver down to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, we can't pretend that Russell Wilson is some massive upgrade. You know what
I know.
This isn't Seattle Seahawks Russell Wilson. So, and you can't, as a Pittsburgh team, you can't rely on those red zone turnovers to be the thing that saves you every single week. That is just not consistent or repeatable. So it will be interesting to see how they bounce back. 2 straight losses definitely kind of kill the momentum that they had with that 3-0 start. It makes it look like a little bit of smoke and mirrors, but then at the end of the day, Mike Tomlin is the magician when it comes to smoke and mirrors. So I'm not going to put it past him to keep some crazy stuff up, but definitely some slight, I don't want to say panic, but some concern in Pittsburgh right now. But with that being said, that is going to do it for our Week 5 recap edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. Gino, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Look forward to having you on every single Monday the rest of the season. That's going to do it for me, your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland. Whew, had to hit the coffee and stay up late for this one, folks. Hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's the Locked On NFL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And as I tell you guys every episode, stay safe out there.